All right, beloved Madridistas, welcome back to Madrid on a gloomy, drizzly, nasty day. Welcome back. Who would have thought, after all of the drama that we've survived this year with injuries and tactical mistakes and some pretty horrible defeats, with everything that's happened, who would have thought that we'd be here? Top of the league, 2 points clear of Atletico de Madrid, 7 points clear of Barça. And like I say, all things considered, it's amazing that we are where we are. Let's talk about last night's match. This was a really good performance, very high energy performance. Despite taking a goal in 30 seconds, which is crazy, but the reaction, I think, was phenomenal. And I want to talk about the match, but not so much tactics and things like that, but I think individual players, because there were some excellent individual performances last night. So we need to talk about these players individually. So welcome back to the channel, and let me give you my thoughts on the match yesterday against Las Palmas. Welcome back. Let's get started. All right, Madridistas, welcome back. Okay, let's talk about the match yesterday. It was held at a kind of a weird time. The match was at 4:15 local time, which is kind of bizarre. For those of you that have come to Spain, you know that lunchtime is typically between 2:30 and 3. So this is kind of like smack in the middle of your lunch hour. Not a great schedule, but the atmosphere in the stadium was really electric. I don't know, yesterday, it didn't feel like just a league match against Las Palmas. It felt the atmosphere was a lot more charged. There was a lot of kind of tension, anticipation. I think maybe because we had the chance to go back top of the leaderboard, but there was a really, really good energy in the stadium yesterday. The match started, as poorly as you could possibly, want. All right, you concede a goal 30 seconds into a match before we had even touched the ball. So I mean, literally, we were down before we had even touched the ball, which is extraordinary. I don't remember the last time we conceded a goal that quickly, but it started terribly, but the reaction was fantastic. And on the part of really everybody, there was a huge amount of intensity in this match. There were reports that after the Celta match the other night, that the players were really taken aback by some of the whistles and the crowd reaction. And apparently there was a meeting between the players, and they really all kind of came together to say, we need to do something. We need to turn this around. We all need to play at 115% because, they're very conscious that the crowd is not happy, and I think they're feeling the pressure. But whatever was discussed in that meeting worked, because this was a really high intensity performance. A very, very good performance. I noticed that when we were in possession, there was so much movement off the ball. The player that received the ball had so many options. You had players moving everywhere, players making runs deep, players coming in to provide support in short spaces. There was just a lot of movement off the ball, and I think, it gave our players in possession so many options. So, this is just when the entire team plays together and everybody's playing with the same intensity level, really, really good things happen. We were recovering the ball very quickly. We were pressing comprehensively. And some of the passes between the lines were phenomenal. There were a lot of through balls. We'll talk about Ceballos in a minute. But a lot of the passing was really excellent. Even some of the passes from the back, from Rudiger, etc., I thought were really, really good. And, these are some of the best, fittest athletes in the world, but we sometimes forget that they're human. And it's very difficult, even if you're a perfectly trained athlete, and these guys are perfect physical specimens, but we are human beings, and sometimes your natural energy level is just higher than, some days than others. And there are days when everybody's off and everyone's flat, but there are days when everybody's switched on. And this was one of those days where everybody felt like they were really energized and kind of playing to their full capacity. So I'm very happy with the performance overall. I mean, the goals were phenomenal. We had 3 goals disallowed, which is kind of crazy. A couple of them were very confusing at first. I think technically they were probably correctly canceled, but when you watch them in real time, it was very confusing, at least initially. But this could have easily been 8 or 9 or 10-1 because we were just much, much better in all aspects of play. But the important takeaways in this match, like I say, aren't so much tactical. They're really down to individual players. So I want to talk about this. Look, in terms of the lineup, there was nothing surprising here because, we heard that Tchouaméni had an injury sort of last minute that would exclude him from the squad, and we knew that Camavinga was injured. So this is one of the more predictable lineups, I think, this season. So we kind of knew what was coming. The only questions you would maybe ask is whether Rodrigo would start or, maybe he could make way for Enric. Enric played really well the other day, scored 2 goals. Against Las Palmas at home, you think maybe it's a match where he could start Enric just to give him confidence and continuity after his performance last time. That wasn't the case. Ancelotti likes to stick to his guns sort of over and over. But anyway, the lineup was fairly predictable. The only other question you could have asked yourself in the midfield was, would you play Ceballos or Modric? Those two were both possibilities, but I think that we were all kind of leaning for Ceballos in terms of the most probable outcome. So the lineup was kind of what we all expected. Courtois, Lucas Vázquez on the right, Fran on the left, Asencio and Rudiger as center backs. Ancelotti looks committed to Asencio now, which is really good to see. In the middle of the pitch, you had Ceballos, Fede, and Jude. And then up front, you had the trio, and this time Brahim on the right and Rodrigo on the left. But again, nothing too surprising there. But like I say, the important takeaways here are in terms of individual performances. And I want to talk to you guys about the Fran-Mendy debate. And after the last couple of matches, I'm leaning more towards Fran. And, the narrative has always been that Mendy is a better defender, and therefore in really big matches, you need to rely on Mendy. And that somehow Fran is softer. I'm not so sure anymore. I think Mendy's had a pretty poor year so far. And I think there's a big difference between the two players. I mean, Fran, especially the last couple of matches, brings a lot of energy and a lot more mobility and dynamism in that position. Mendy tends to be a lot more static. He doesn't come up as often. He doesn't participate in attack as often. He's not a player that on the counter you feel is kind of part of the counter. I mean, he doesn't, you don't see him flying up the wing the way that you see Fran do. And quite frankly, right now, I'm leaning more towards Fran and possibly even in big matches. So in terms of that debate, it's kind of interesting. I think the last couple of performances maybe have changed my mind a little bit. I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comment section. Okay, the other important discussion is Ceballos versus Tchouaméni. And, Ceballos had the performance of his life last night. He was, I think, the best player on the pitch. Him and Kylian, I think Jude's first half was incredible. But Ceballos was, spectacular. We followed Ceballos through Betis, and then when he was on loan at Arsenal. I've never seen Ceballos play like this in my life. He had an incredible performance, especially in the second half. He was everywhere. He was stealing every ball, making unbelievable passes to the forwards. He had an incredible performance, but if Tchouaméni had not been injured, I'm sure Ancelotti would have played Tchouaméni. So we need to start asking ourselves for the remainder of the season what we think about the Ceballos-Tchouaméni situation. And I'm leaning more towards Ceballos. I think Ceballos in the last few matches has shown that he can play in the first squad. He has the skill, the quality, the energy level. He's not making the mistakes that he used to make. And he's been really good in all facets of the game. I think yesterday he defended, I don't know how many balls this guy stole, but a lot. And he was wonderful in attack, threaded some unbelievable passes. There was so much awareness in his play. He was really, really good. So in terms of the Ceballos-Tchouaméni discussion, I'm leaning more towards Ceballos in terms of what remains this season because I think he's proving to be an incredibly useful player. But again, I'd love to hear what you guys think about this. Okay, we also need to talk about Alaba. And David, it was so wonderful to see. It was very emotional when he came on the pitch. It's been over a year. He was injured in December of last year. So we're talking 13 months. And it was wonderful to see him back. He looked pretty good, made a couple of really good passes. He looked pretty good. But of course, as Alaba comes back, it's a wonderful resource to have because Rudiger has been playing way too many minutes. I'm always worried about Rudiger getting injured. And so I think it's going to be great to have Alaba back. But we have to remember that this is a 32-year-old player who's coming off a very serious injury. So I don't know to what extent we can, expect him to be the player that he was prior to the injury. So it's a very positive thing. And we were all, the stadium was so happy to see him back. But especially because we have to take minutes off Rudiger. But again, how effective Alaba will be kind of remains to be seen. Another player we need to talk about is Asencio. And this player has, it's no longer a coincidence. Okay, it's been 5-6 matches now. This kid can play this position as a starter. He has a lot of grit. First of all, his placement on the pitch is very, very good. He alternates very well with Rudiger. They cover each other's backs really, really well. And they communicate quite well. He's very physical. He's strong. He goes into 50-50 balls with so much kind of power. He just gives you a lot of security. He's also quite fast. So if he makes a mistake, he's very quick to catch up and correct the mistake. So I'm very happy with what Asencio is showing us so far. And I do think that he should be a starter until Alaba is 100% fit. Which I think could take a while. But Asencio, another very positive takeaway is that I think, that the Bernabeu, as I mentioned in my last video, loves this kid, and I think he's proving to be a real asset this year. Okay, we need to talk about Jude. Jude, the more I watch this guy play, the more I love him. And the more he looks like Zidane. So the way that this guy takes the ball in the middle of the pitch, the way he runs with the ball, the way he protects the ball, the way he fakes one way, spins another way. He has a balance, a beautiful balance about him, and a dexterity in his movement that is just wonderful. He combines perfect technique with a lot of physicality and power. This player is transformational, and he's just such an incredible find. We all knew that Jude was good, but only Juni Carafat knew how good this kid was because he's showing aspects of his game that I hadn't seen before when he was in Borussia. An incredible player. But one thing I do have to say about Jude, and we need to be aware of this, he was complaining about his shoulder yesterday on more than one occasion. He was you could see him kind of making movements and sort of rubbing. There was one point where even Ancelotti went up and sort of was talking to him about the shoulder. He never had surgery on this when he had the original injury, and I think he might have to this summer because this is turning out to be a lingering issue. And it's very distracting to play when you have an injury like this and you're playing in pain. It's very difficult. So we're going to have to keep our eye on Jude's shoulder. But his first half last night was just fantastic. He had a couple of runs with the ball that were just divine. They were divine. Reminded me so much of Zidane at his prime. Okay, another discussion we need to have is the Brahim versus Rodrigo discussion. Now, I don't know if you guys agree with me. Let me know what you think, but both of these players, I don't know why I always have the feeling that they're more impactful coming off the bench than when they start. Now, they're both amazing players, and they've both performed very well when they have started, but I just have the sense that they are more impactful when they come off the bench. And I think what this means is that I think that we can allow ourselves more rotation in that position, sort of the right forward. That position, I think we can experiment a little bit more, and I think that we have a lot of room to give Arda minutes, more minutes. Arda Güler, I think, deserves more minutes. We can even play Enrique in that position because he's played it before as a forward on the right. But, on the basis that Rodrigo and Brahim tend to have more impact when they come off the bench, I think that we are in a position where we could experiment a little bit. Let's try to start Arda once, or let's try to start Enrique in that position, because it's a little more questionable than, say, the left wing or other positions where we know who the best player is for that position. I think the right wing is kind of up for grabs, and I think we should experiment a little bit more in terms of Arda Güler and Enrique. Okay, we need to talk about Lucas Vázquez, and this player deserves all of our respect because of who he is, his tenure and seniority within the club, and the effort that he makes every time he plays. But this is a player that has his limitations defensively. And this is a player that, he was always a winger. And a few years ago in Real Madrid, we needed to make him back up right back, and he kind of got stuck in that role. But when we play against difficult opposition, we expose his weaknesses, and it's a player that does have his limitations. And I think that right now, the right back position is probably our most urgent problem. We have a couple of options on the left. I think, when Dani Carvajal comes back, he's going to be 34 years old, coming back from a brutal injury. It's going to take a long time for him to be back in shape. And I don't think we can count on that. So the right back position, I think, is our weakest, link, and we need to do something about that in summer, because with all due respect, Lucas Vázquez, we love you, and you've been such a wonderful asset to this club, but I just don't think that he can be a starting right back, especially as we enter the end of the season against really difficult teams. So we're going to have to do something about that in summer, and I hope we do. I also have to tell you guys that I'm really worried about the minutes that Rudiger and Fede are playing. Even Jude, I think, needs to rest a little bit more. There are some players that are very good at controlling their energy level and sort of managing their energy. Some players can't do it. Players like Jude and Fede and Rudiger, they give 110% every time, and they're very physical, and their style of play is very conducive to injuries. And I'm very worried about how many minutes Rudiger is playing. I'm very worried about how many minutes Fede is playing, and Jude as well. And we need to keep our eye on that, because those players are indispensable. If any of those guys gets injured, we're gonna be in trouble. We need to talk about Kylian. Kylian, look, this guy. He didn't win the Ballon d'Or in the last few years, but not because he wasn't the best player in the world. It's because PSG didn't go anywhere. But the player the Kylian that we all knew, that we've been following, the player that almost eliminated us single-handedly, the player that scored 4 goals in a World Cup final, the player that was completely unmarkable because he's just so quick. So that player that scared the daylights out of everybody in world football. He's back, okay? He's back. Now, we have to forgive Kylian for the initial adjustment, because he came to a new city, a new club, new teammates, a new system, a new manager. Of course, and he's playing in a new position. It's going to take time to adapt, to adjust, but he's done so, okay? I think that he's now comfortable in that 9 position. He's finding space more easily. He's switching play with his teammates more easily, more instinctively, and things are starting to click. I think his state of mind is more positive. He's more adventurous. He looks less anxious to me. But his performance last night was phenomenal. I mean, he could have scored 5, 6, 7. He played a phenomenal game. He was an absolute nightmare for Las Palmas defenders. The Kylian that we've all known for the last few years is back, and now he plays for us in the number 9 position, and I'm so happy and so relieved for him personally, but also in terms of what this means for the squad, because Kylian, we've never questioned his quality ever. He's an unbelievably gifted player, so quick, so technical. So I'm just really excited that Kylian is in a better state of mind, and I think he's going to do incredible things at this club. Just one small little note regarding refs. I've spoken to you guys many times about the corruption in La Liga in Spain. But another thing I would say, aside from the fact that, that these guys are corrupt, they're also inept, because, I watch football from all over the world, and I watch the Premier League, the Bundesliga, very occasionally Ligue 1, occasionally the Serie A. This is the only league in the world where the ref is always the protagonist. The ref is always the star of the show. They're so quick to call anything. If a ref should call what he sees and when he's sure of what he sees. But in Spain, they're constantly looking to call any little touch, any little thing. They have this desire to be the center of attention all the time, and it's just really annoying. And I think the refereeing last night was just atrocious. There were some crazy calls. But again, that's something we've kind of become accustomed to here in Spain. But anyway, in conclusion, look, I think this was really positive. I love the energy level that I saw. Ancelotti is hell-bent on this 4-3-3 thing. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't look like we're going to change his mind. We're going to get away with it with teams like Las Palmas. It's going to be a lot more dangerous if we try it against bigger clubs towards the end of the season. But anyway, at least we're moving in the right direction. At least mathematically, we're still in play in the big competitions. So I'm pretty happy about that. But anyway, good performance, a really interesting match, very lively. I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comment section. But thank you for joining me as always. And I will see you guys in the next video. And as always, a la Madrid.